So it just came out that 45 had said he wants to implement a stop and frisk for the city of Chicago. Now, we all know stop and frisk became infamous in the state of New York under the mayor rule, I guess you can say, of Rudy Giuliani, as I call him. I call him Rudy Giuliani or Fuliani, but I refuse to call him by his real name. But anyway, and we know how much of a failure that was. We also know that it pinpointed or it went after a certain group of people. It went after mostly black people, specifically black men, and you can throw in some Hispanic males as well. I don't think I ever heard of one white person or one white male who fell under that stop and frisk shit. And that was only so they could pad the numbers within their prison system. Now, we all know that when it comes to Chicago, they love to talk about all the crime that happens to Chicago, this, that, and the third. Well, I was reading something and it said that actually, despite all the stories that come out about Chicago and all this crime that goes on, and even though they don't know who did it, because every time a crime happens, they don't have a name or a person of interest, they said crime actually took a dip this year compared to the last 2 years. But they want you to believe that the crime is so high. As a matter of fact, if you did the top 10, hell, even the top 50 most dangerous cities in America, Chicago is nowhere to be found in any of those lists. Now, you would think a city that's so bad and so dangerous that it should be close to number one, but it's not even in the top 50. And that's one thing they won't tell you. Y'all remember when the police department, one of those Chicago police departments, put that bait truck there with the Nike shoes on there, and they got discovered that that's what they were trying to do? Notice you haven't heard or seen a bait truck since that incident, and that happened back, I think, in August. And it is now October. I'm telling you, Chicago had, they paint Chicago as being one of the most violent cities in the world, or in America, hell, probably even the world. But I will tell you what it is definitely one of the most corrupt, and that's a fact. They say Chicago has one of the most corrupt, is one of the most corrupt cities in America. Now that is a fact. Now, Rahm Emanuel, who I cannot stand, actually said something in response to 45, in which I agreed with. I guess in this case, a broke clock is indeed right twice a day. Because he says that he believes that the only reason 45 is doing this is because it's a political stunt. He knows that the election is coming up and he needs to get votes from a certain group of people who live in Chicago. And by doing that, implementing this whole stop and frisk thing will be the ticket that he needs to get those votes, and then he'll most likely turn his back on them like he's done to a vast majority of supporters. But his supporters are so dumb and claim to have such a high IQ when their IQ is about as low as the damn pavement that they walk upon. Now, remember also, 45 said he wanted to implement or have the National Guard or the military come into Chicago. He said that last year, and I haven't seen not one military personnel go traipsing down the streets of Chicago like you would think it's a military parade. I haven't seen one tank go through there. He only says these things to get his base riled up. And for some reason, they never ever hold him accountable when he does not fulfill his so-called promises. All of his promises are empty, just like that wall. He's been in for what, over a year, going on 2 years in January, and that damn wall has not broken ground yet. But they still believe that the wall is going to happen. All I have to say is this: 2020 is approaching. It'll be here sooner than people think. And that wall will still not be there. They won't even break ground to start a foundation to start building this so-called wall. So I do believe that it's nothing but a political stunt. I don't believe he's going to bring that whole stop and frisk thing to Chicago because it was a failure when it happened in New York. And if he did, what it's going to do is it's going to go out there and they're just going to start harassing random black people, lock them up for some silly crime that's not even worth being locked up over. Meanwhile, you got in the next state over, you have all these damn opioid addicts who's being strung out all over the damn place, but they ain't gonna lock them up, but they just want to give them some help, send them to a safe injection site. Notice they call them safe injection sites. I never knew an injection site could be quote unquote safe, but I guess. Notice he hasn't really uttered anything about them damn opioids. Now I don't want this to happen. I'm just saying hypothetically. Let's just say that the opioid plague happened to trickle on over to the black community. Then and only then will he say something. Then and only then will there be no safe injection sites. Then and only then will they start locking drug users up. Because the opposite of everything I just said only applies to white people. They're not going to lock them up if they use them. The only thing that they will really do is they'll probably lock them up if they're the ones caught dealing, and they barely want to do that. Because they don't want, while they are the face of this plague, they don't want them to be the face of the ones who's dealing it as well. Sorry, but you are. But as for 45 and this whole stop and frisk thing, I don't think it's going to happen, but that doesn't mean it won't happen. So to the people of Chicago, be on high alert. Don't let your guard down because he might slip something in, but I think it's a political stunt to get votes. Y'all let me know what you think down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. I'll post the link to the article, email, PayPal, and Patreon in the description. I'll talk to you in the next one.